Dear songwriter, so I was pretty stuck recently in terms of my songwriting. There were a few things that weren't going my way, so to speak, and I was just struggling. Fortunately, through going through these struggles and kind of just working through them, I was able to really experience three different breakthroughs. And so in this episode, I'm going to outline what those breakthroughs were, what my initial struggle was, and how I was able to have these breakthroughs. Number one, getting my second verse back on topic and finalized. Breakthrough number two was being able to destroy certain cliches. And then number three was finalizing my outro's chord progression. So I'm going to break this down, going to go through this. Hopefully, in hearing about these breakthroughs, you will be able to use these as potential tools to help you also break through when you're feeling stuck, or you can anticipate some of these potential problems and you don't have to break through because there will be no issues in the first place. My name is Connor Frost. I'm a professional songwriting mentor who's helped hundreds of songwriters now to write their first collection of songs. And this is Dear Songwriter, the podcast to help you confidently write and release your songs so that you can start your artist journey and live out your most musical and creative life. Let's get into it. Okay, welcome. This is episode 99, which is pretty exciting, which means, if my math is correct, episode 100 is the one after this. All very exciting. Basically, what happened was, like I said, I was stuck, but the way I got unstuck, I'm going to break it down even further, but I spent about 72 hours at my parents' place in New York when they were on vacation in Puerto Rico, and I was able to really focus on songwriting during that stretch, just kind of like mix up my location, mix up my songwriting process, and I ended up being able to experience these breakthroughs, right? So, as always, going to break this down. I'm going to tell you what the breakthrough was. I'm going to tell you what my initial struggle was, and then I'm going to talk about how I fixed it to basically get to that breakthrough. Breakthrough number one was getting my second verse back on topic and finalized, right? So my initial struggle was that I had written this second verse, but while there were certain aspects that I liked about it, certain hooks, certain lyrical hooks, in reflection, when I looked back, I felt like it strayed off topic. I felt like it didn't really speak to the main message of the song. To give you a little bit of background on the song, the main concept is that there's this character who's feeling like they never fit into their surroundings due to their racial background as well as the environments that they grew up in. So that's the general concept of the song. And I felt like my verse two started to shift attention towards an ex-girlfriend. So basically I had brought up this character of the ex-girlfriend in verse 2, but I did so in a way that just totally shifted attention and felt like it didn't need to. So it just felt confusing because all of a sudden it was like, okay, what is this song about? And so that shift in focus felt very unnecessary. I recognized this and I fixed this by approaching the issue through a 3-step process. So essentially step one was I wrote a draft of a new verse 2, keeping the focus of the main character in mind. So again, recognizing the issue that the focus on the ex-girlfriend didn't make sense. So I was like, you know what? Let's focus back on the main character. So I went in with that kind of prerequisite, whatever you want to call it. Step two was after I wrote that verse, I decided that the focus was there and that I was back on track. The right words, however, were not yet there. This is important, right? Because I think sometimes we try to solve too many issues at one time. I think I solved one problem of getting the song back on track from a topic and concept standpoint, but I didn't find the right words. And I think that's okay because the next thing I did was I looked back at that draft. I basically circled what I thought was cool and underlined what I thought wasn't cool. And so I was able to kind of identify like, okay, where are the issues? I fixed one problem. Now let's figure out where we can make adjustments from here. So I think solving one problem at a time can be really helpful when it comes to your songwriting process, at least for me. After I decided I was back on track, but that I didn't have the right words, I wrote another draft. I had a little bit more focus on the emotions and the experiences of the main character, which I felt was lacking in that first draft. So again, solved one of the problems, identified the new problem, and then tried to fix that problem. And so the result I thought was pretty good. And here are the verses side by side. So this is the initial verse that felt too much like the focus had gone to the ex-girlfriend. Here it is. And then to college, I met her dad, who looked at me, said it was cool I had a band. So I played her 3 chords and I told her 3 words. I really liked the line, I played her 3 chords and I told her 3 words, but again, just felt like the shift was too much towards the ex-girlfriend. So here's the most recent draft of this verse after going through these steps. And later on, I met her dad, who looked at me and folded together his 2 hands, then took off his shoes and took a bow. What this verse does is it shifts the attention back to what's happening to the main character. And from there, I'm hoping that the listener will be able to deduce what the character was going through when this was happening, when this father decided to remove his shoes and bow at this main character, right? Again, not trying to spoil the song, because one day I look forward to sharing it with you all. But my hope is that the listener will be able to deduce one way or the other how the character felt or come up with their own interpretation of what that means. But the focus shifted back to the main character and spoke more to the concept of the song, this idea of not fitting in. Okay, breakthrough number 2, destroying cliches. So what happened was I had this lyric for an outro of a song, another song that I'm working on, and that lyric was, quote, make this song last forever. And so I had 2 major issues with this lyric. While I liked how it rolled off the tongue from like a melody standpoint, from a diction standpoint, from an amount of syllable standpoint, I felt like the lyric itself broke the 4th wall. And what I mean by that is that reference to theater, where all of a sudden the main character brings the audience into the show. And I felt like that quote, make this song last forever, or that lyric, by referencing the song itself, broke the 4th wall, which felt a little bit out of place based on the context of the rest of the song. And if I'm being honest, felt a little bit corny, which brings me to my next point of what I didn't like about it, which was that it felt just a little too cliche. Make this song last forever. Maybe that was in my head. Either way, that's how I felt. So I spent a long time trying to fix this. Tried to think of totally new lyrics, totally different words. Nothing was really sticking. And so I don't know, I can't remember exactly what happened, but I just looked at the line, and I was like, wait, what if I just change the word this to her? So instead of make this song last forever, it would be make her song last forever. And this is ultimately how I ended up fixing this. By changing this one word, I got rid of the issue of the 4th wall, right? Because make her song last forever spoke specifically about one of the characters in the song. The other thing is, by getting it more specific to her song, I felt like it just made it feel a little less cliche. So by just changing one word, I was able to fix this problem, and it works, right? Make this song last forever. Maybe I could argue that rolls off the tongue like a little bit better, but I think the pros outweigh the cons in this situation, because make her song last forever definitely works and it speaks to the storyline. And I think it's a more powerful line because the song is a powerful story. And so by referencing her song, you're just attached to that character that much more. So all this to say, one word change could go a long way. Okay, breakthrough number 3 was finalizing my outro's chord progression. So basically, same song, I had multiple chord progressions. And in hindsight, I think I was just trying to be too fancy. I had this like one sequence of chord progressions that was like 4 chords. Then I tried to go into this totally different set of chords. And just listening back, I was like, it's just too all over the place. I felt like because there was so much change harmonically, melodies weren't latching on. And so basically, I listened back to the outro and I just zeroed in on the chords, and I realized that the first 4 chords of the chord progression of the entire outro were really the strongest and what I felt lended itself best to that part of the song and the melody that it was supporting. How I fixed this was I literally just took those 4 chords. I said, screw the rest of the chords. And I looped those 4 chords and I took that all the way out through the outro. So instead of trying to get so fancy with this chord progression by introducing a million chords, I was like, you know what? Let me double down on what's working and let me just use these 4 chords, let it take us all the way out. And I'll focus on making everything else really, really cool so that this outro can really pop the way that I want it to pop. Turned out that's all that I needed was to simplify. So let me go through the breakthroughs once again. So the first breakthrough was getting my second verse back on topic and then finalized. The second breakthrough that I experienced was destroying cliches, specifically a cliche for a particular song that I was working on. And then breakthrough number 3 was finalizing my outro's chord progression. And so the takeaways that I have for this entire experience would be that you may need 2 drafts at least to get it right. In the first situation I was telling you about, simply getting back on topic was the first step, and then finding the right words was the second step. So you might need those 2 steps or 2 different drafts in order to get it right, especially if you've gone off the tracks like I did. The second conclusion I came to, the second takeaway, is that you could just be 1 word change away from turning a cliche into not a cliche. And I say this because a lot of times I feel like I hear from people who say, my lyrics are too cliche. It's like one of the first things people tell me when they talk about their lyrics. And so instead of feeling like you need to throw everything away, take a look at what you have and ask yourself like, okay, what words could I change to make this more specific so that it doesn't feel as general and it doesn't feel as cliche? And then the last conclusion I would leave you with is that simple is better. I was trying to get too fancy with this chord progression, ultimately shaving it down to 4 chords that work, that support the melody. People resonate with simple more than they do complex. I would consider that the next time you're feeling insecure about the chord progressions you're using, the melodies that you're using, and just remember that people are going to resonate with simple. Cool. That's it. Hope this was helpful. If it was, let me know. Send me a message on Instagram, Connor L. Frost. Tell me that you listened to this. I would love to hear from you. And I'll talk to you next week for episode 100. That's exciting. Thank you all so much.